Hey everyone, and a really warm welcome. I know you're on this incredible journey to becoming teachers, and you're probably diving into some pretty big ideas right now. Well, today we're going to tackle one of the most important ones. How do people actually learn? So, if you're looking at all these isms, behaviorism, cognitivism, constructivism, and you're feeling kind of lost in a sea of theories, just take a breath. I want you to know you are so not alone. Seriously. Every single teacher has been exactly where you are, trying to wrap their head around all this stuff. All right, so before we dive into all the big, complex theories, let's just start at square one and build a solid foundation together. First things first, what do we really mean when we talk about learning? Okay, I know this definition looks a little formal, a little academic, but stick with me, because there are two super important ideas buried in there. The first is enduring change. That just means real learning isn't temporary. It's not something you forget a day later. It sticks with you. And the second part? Results from experience. This is huge. It means learning doesn't just happen out of nowhere. It happens because we do things, we interact with the world. And this is a really important distinction to make. The difference between learning and, well, just growing up or maturation. Think of it like this. Maturation is the stuff that happens naturally as our bodies and brains develop. Like a baby learning to walk. It just kind of happens. But learning? That comes from experience. It's about a kid practicing their letters to learn how to read. It's the active part, the what we go through part of our development. Okay, so we've got our basic definition of learning down. Now let's look at a few different ways to think about it. Think of them as three different lenses, and these are the big theories that are really going to shape how you approach teaching. And please think of these theories as a toolkit. I really mean that. They aren't just some dusty, abstract ideas you have to memorize for a test. No way. Each one is a practical tool you can actually use, a different way to see and understand what's going on in your students' heads. So here's a quick flyover of the three big ones. First up, we've got behaviorism. This one basically says learning is all about stimulus and response. The learner is, well, pretty passive. They just react to their environment. Then things evolve to cognitivism. Here the learner is more like an active computer, processing information. They're thinking, organizing, it's all happening inside their head. And that brings us to constructivism, where the learner is seen as an active creator of their own knowledge. See that shift from passive receiver to active creator? That's a huge deal, and it's why we're going to focus on that last one, because it's so important for teaching today. All right, let's zoom in on constructivism. This theory is a real game changer in modern education. And if you need one word to remember it by, it's this: building. What this really means is that learning isn't about your students just soaking up information like a sponge. Nope. It's about them actively trying to make sense of things. They're like little detectives, constantly trying to piece together the world and build their own understanding of it. And you can't really talk about constructivism without talking about these two guys. They're like the two giants, the master architects of this whole idea, Jean Piaget and Lev Vygotsky. So these two had slightly different takes on how we build knowledge. Let's break it down. Piaget was totally focused on the individual mind. He had these ideas called assimilation and accommodation. Think of it this way. A toddler has a mental folder for doggy. When they see a poodle, they just assimilate it. It fits in the doggy folder. But then they see a cat. It doesn't fit. They have to accommodate by creating a whole new folder called kitty. That's Piaget in a nutshell. Now, Vygotsky, he was all about the social world. He said we learn best with other people, our parents, our teachers, our friends. For him, learning wasn't something that happened after you developed. Learning is what actually sparked development. It's a subtle but really powerful difference. And that brings us to Vygotsky's most famous idea, something you'll hear about a lot, the zone of proximal development, or ZPD. I absolutely love this concept. Just think of it as the learning sweet spot. It's that perfect space right between what a student can do all by themselves and what they can do with a little help, with your help. That zone, that's where the magic happens. That's where you, as a teacher, can make the biggest difference. Okay, theory is great, right? But the big question is, what does any of this actually look like in a real classroom on a hectic Monday morning? Let's bring it down to earth and get practical. This right here is probably one of the most powerful phrases in all of education. Your role changes.
You stop being the sage on the stage, the expert at the front of the room just delivering information. Instead, you become the guide on the side. You're moving around, you're asking good questions, you're helping students figure things out for themselves and build their own understanding.
And when you make that shift, it opens up a whole world of amazing classroom activities. We're talking about things like project-based learning, where kids are tackling real problems, or inquiry-based learning, where their own curiosity drives the lesson. It's all about collaboration, group work, and really letting students take ownership of their own learning journey. Okay, as we start to wrap this up, I just want to circle back to what we talked about at the very beginning. I know this is a lot of information to process, but I really need you to remember you are in such good company. Look, nobody expects you to have all this mastered overnight. Becoming a great teacher isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a journey. It's a process of constantly learning and figuring out how to use these ideas with the real live students in front of you. And that process, that's something that connects you with every single teacher who has ever walked into a classroom. And really, at the heart of that whole journey is one thing: empathy. This quote says it so well. Think about your students like an iceberg. What you see in the classroom, their behavior, their test scores, how they act that day, that's just the tip. Empathy is what allows you to try and understand the massive part of the iceberg that's underneath the surface, their home life, their fears, their passions. That's where the real teaching happens. So I'll leave you with this thought to take with you. You're not just training to be a teacher, you're training to be an architect of learning. You're the one who will design the spaces and experiences where your students build their knowledge. So the only question left is, what kind of architect are you going to be?